At a point in time, did you become concerned about information you learned about reading material that Ms. Geyser was using?
I did.
Why?
Because it is related to the index offense.
Morgan Geyser was just 12 years old when she stabbed her classmate nearly 20 times, almost killing her by a supposed order from the fictional Slender Man. She was set to walk out of the mental hospital where she's been for years, until a big problem came up.
Morgan is not more dangerous today. She has not done anything other than work with the release planning group on her release. That's the only thing that she's done, is answer every question asked of her. She didn't secretly read something she wasn't supposed to. She didn't lie about something she read. She didn't lie about contacts with people in the community. And it's almost a perverted situation where she's being punished for her answering the questions that are asked of her.
I'm Elizabeth Millner for Law&Crime. The Slender Man stabbing case, even more than a decade later, continues to have a lot of twists and turns. First, Morgan Geyser was supposed to be released and get set up in a group home, but then the judge paused that decision so he could get to the bottom of concerns about a book she was reading and a man she was talking to.
This is wrong, what they are doing. This is wrong, what DHS has done. It's not right. There's not anything that Morgan did. She wasn't violent. She didn't self-harm. She didn't lie about anything. And to, really rake her through the mud in these proceedings and bring up the fact that somebody who's been in for 11 years, who's never had any restriction on her reading material, that somehow because she cried when confronted with the fact that it was going to be reviewed, that's somehow a red flag. Really, all of this is just sort of a hit job against her, and an unfair one at that, Your Honor.
Morgan Geyser has been seeking conditional release for years, and she finally got her chance when a judge ruled in January she could be released. But like I mentioned, there was a holdup in that release when details came to light about what Morgan was doing while at the Winnebago Mental Health Institute. Initially, it was revealed Morgan was reading something with dark themes. It was unclear the full scope of what she was reading and why it caused concern. But at last week's hearing, we learned a lot more.
At a point in time, did you become concerned about information you learned about reading material that Ms. Geyser was using?
I did.
Why?
Because it is related to the index offense, I suppose.
In what way?
It's violent.
Specifically, is one of the books that you're referencing called Rent Boy?
Objection leading.
Overruled. It is leading, but we all are familiar with these various documents, and this will move the hearing along, so overruled.
Yes.
And did you have concerns about the fact that Ms. Geyser had read that book?
I did.
Why?
Because it was a dark novel that revolved around murder and the selling of body parts on the black market, along with sexual sadism.
So this information came to light weeks after 3 different psychologists testified Morgan showed improvement and that she wasn't a risk to public safety. But given she was in a mental health facility in the first place because she stabbed her classmate more than a dozen times, doesn't look too good.
How did Ms. Geyser react when she was informed the treatment team and conditional release team would be monitoring her reading material?
She was upset.
Did she say why?
She didn't feel it was necessary for the team to oversee things that she used as coping skills and a creative outlet.
Do you consider it an important part of a treatment plan, a conditional release plan, to monitor things like reading material and media usage?
Yes, that's a standard thing that we do as a conditional release team, and it's very individualized to each participant as well as their index offense.
Was that fact relayed to Ms. Geyser?
Yes.
And was she receptive to that?
No, she still thought that it was unnecessary.
Did you talk about monitoring Ms. Geyser's reading material during more than one meeting with her?
We did.
Did her response to that monitoring ever change?
No.
Would it be fair to say she pushed back on that monitoring?
Yes.
Did she ever come around and acknowledge that that would be an appropriate thing for the team to do?
No.
Was that concerning to the conditional release team?
It was.
Why?
Because it shows risk, and the conditional release plan cannot, or the conditional release team, I'm sorry, cannot write a conditional release plan when we aren't aware of the risk to the community.
Nicole Whitaker said she advised others on her team who weren't aware she was reading Rent Boy. So how did she get the book? We learned in the hearing it wasn't from the library. Someone sent it to her. But that wasn't the only issue she was concerned with.
Are you aware of an individual named Jeffrey Pagels?
I am aware of him, yes.
When you are creating a conditional release plan, is it important for you to know people who a participant is having contact with outside of an institution?
It is.
Why?
There are a number of reasons, risk being the number one. We have to take in the participants' treatment needs, as they're in the community. And so I asked Ms. Geyser, who are the people that she's communicating with on the outside, and that his name came up.
How recently had she had communication with him?
I'm not sure the answer to that. I know that she stated he did send her a letter after she was granted conditional release, and she stated that she ripped it up and threw it away.
So at the point in time when you discussed this individual with Ms. Geyser, did it seem that she wanted contact with him?
No.
Okay.
There was a reason why Morgan wanted no contact with Jeffrey, and when the conditional release team discovered his Facebook, well, let's just say they didn't like what they found.
Was there any information about this individual JP that was relevant to your assessment of Ms. Geyser's risk to herself or the community?
Yes, but it was also concerning for Miss Geyser. And when we talk about risk to the community, she is included in that assessment. And he had things directly relating to her on his Facebook page. So yes, that was concerning.
What types of things relating to Ms. Geyser was on his social media accounts?
I'm going to object on relevance grounds. And I'm happy to make further argument.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I think it's relative and probative to the issues that have been raised by the petition to revoke the conditional release, from the standpoint that information the person, Mr. Pagels, may have on his Facebook account could be from any place, but it may also involve information that purportedly may have come from Ms. Geyser. I don't know that, but I wanted to be able to hear that, and that should be part of the record. So I'll overrule the objection.
We found that there were letters and drawings that she had sent him, a postcard, and he was selling them. He was selling the items.
Were you able to see the drawings that he was purporting were from Ms. Geyser?
Yes.
Were they concerning to you?
Yes.
Why?
They were very dark in nature. I would describe it as a horror type picture.
Excuse me?
Horror.
All right.
Remind the court again what this is.
That's a drawing that came off of Jeffrey Pagels' Facebook page. He compiled a number of items that he was selling as, he called it the Slender Man package.
At a point in time, did you learn any information about JP that was concerning as it related to sexual behavior?
Yes.
And what was that?
In speaking, we were very open about this topic with Ms. Geyser during the meetings. You know, as it's a great risk as she comes into the community, and she was aware, and she recalled that he would get sexual gratification from her index offense. And I believe that there were letters written back and forth.
Is that information something that Ms. Geyser told you during a meeting?
She did tell us that, yes.
Is that, as far as you're aware, is that information something that she had worked on in therapy or with her treatment team to that point?
I was not sure.
Okay. Was that concerning that you didn't know the answer to that?
Yes,
Why?
because it tells me that there's an unknown risk.
It's pretty shocking and quite frankly gross that this man told Morgan he was aroused by the stabbing. But the defense argued it was known Morgan's pen pal made a few visits to Winnebago, and that information wasn't new. Plus, Morgan later wanted nothing to do with him.
On item 7, it's indicated that Jeffrey Pagel had visits with, well, I guess they used the initials JP. That's who we're talking about, right? Pagel?
Yes,
Had visits with MG, that's Morgan Geyser, right?
yes,
At Winnebago 3 times.
yes,
Initially, it was reported that it was 4 visits, but in fact, it's only 3.
correct,
And every one of those visits that took place with Mr. Pagel was at Winnebago.
yes.
There is no suggestion that Ms. Geyser ever met him in the community.
I'm not aware.
You're not aware of any of her outings that she secretly had contact with Jeff Pagel, right?
Correct.
There's no suggestion at all of that.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And the 3 times that Ms. Geyser saw Pagel was inside, as you understand it, was inside Winnebago's secure facility.
To my knowledge,
So Pagel went through whatever process he would have gone through to get permission to go into the facility to see Ms. Geyser.
I suppose.
And those visits spanned 3 visits over the course of 10 days. That's the extent, isn't it?
From the records they provided us, yes.
June 3rd, June 8th, June 13th
Yes,
of 2023.
yes,
So Winnebago supplied you with those records, right?
they did.
So Jeffrey Pagel's name was known to Winnebago in June of 2023.
It was.
In fact, they were aware of the visits because that's the institution that provided you with the records, right?
Correct.
And initially, it was reported that Pagel visited her on June 30th, but then that's crossed out because that actually never happened, right?
That's what I'm told.
And in fact, it was Miss Geyser that there was a visit scheduled on June 30th with this Pagel person, and it was Miss Geyser that canceled the visit, right?
I don't have firsthand knowledge of that, but that's what I'm told.
Your report that you supplied to the court says Miss Geyser rescinded permission. That's the language you supplied to the court.
Yes,
So your understanding is that it was Miss Geyser who rescinded the ability of Pagel to visit her further.
yes,
And there's been no further visits that you're aware of from Jeffrey Pagel.
correct.
And there's been no contact with him in the community that you're aware of.
Not aware of any, no.
And as part of the release planning process, when you talk to Miss Geyser about people she's had contact with, she brought up Pagel as a person. It was her that brought that name to your attention, right?
Correct.
It wasn't like she was hiding something and you found some notes or something in her room. She told you about Pagel.
She did.
And she asked, didn't she, to have a no contact with Pagel?
She did.
Because she still, as of the time you were meeting with her in January, was expressing a desire not to have contact with him.
Correct.
Pagel is sort of, feel free to disagree with me if you want, but Pagel is sort of a classic example of somebody who appears to be fixated, if you will, on the Slender Man case, or Morgan specifically, right?
It appears he's fixated on true crime as a whole.
When you looked at his Facebook page.
Yes,
Because you didn't talk to him, I'm sure, right?
absolutely not.
So, do you know that he's a former, has law enforcement background?
I do not.
Did you know that he used to be in the work in the correctional system?
I do not.
So you know nothing about Pagel,
Nothing.
other than what you see on Facebook.
That's correct.
And he appears to be somebody who's fixated on, what'd you say, true crime and things like that?
Yes.
And he's the one who's selling things on the internet that he purports are from Miss Geyser.
Yes.
And you don't know, there's two things that are unclear from when you look at Pagel's Facebook page. One is whether the things he says Miss Geyser sent him were even sent by Miss Geyser, right?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
When Pagel puts something on Facebook and says, here's the Slender Man letter,
Sure.
do we know as a treatment team that Miss Geyser even wrote that letter?
No, that was why we were looking into things.
Right, because any person on the internet could claim that I got this from Morgan or I got this from whoever, right? So you don't really know that the things he's saying he got from Morgan even came from Morgan, right?
She had told me that she had sent him things and she was aware that he was selling them. So we did know.
Okay.
It's unclear if Morgan tried to profit off her crime. As for reading Rent Boy, the defense said that was just one of many books Morgan read.
Did you ask Morgan to put together a list for you of all the books she's read? Let's pick the last year. Did you say, Morgan, give me a list of all the books you've read in the last year?
No.
You do know that she read Rent Boy, obviously, because you mentioned it, right? But the reason we know that is because Morgan brought it up as part of the release planning.
Yes.
And that's important because it's not like you found it hidden somewhere in her. It's not like Winnebago found it hidden somewhere, right?
We asked her to provide us with a list of books that she would like to read, and she had brought up that she was reading Rent Boy. She stated that she didn't want to tell the conditional release team the kind of books she was reading because she was afraid that we wouldn't allow them because they were kind of dark, I think was the way she described it.
Did you ask, so you were asking sort of prospectively, can we have a list of books that you are planning to read as you are released?
Yeah, what are you interested in reading?
Okay, but you never asked her for a list of books she's actually read, right?
No.
And in something like Rent Boy, there's no evidence that she sought it out. It appears that somebody mailed it to her at the institution, as you understand it, right?
I don't know if she sought it out or not.
Well, but you said before, you believe someone mailed it to her.
That's what I'm told, yes.
Okay, so all we know is that someone mailed her this book and she read it, right?
I suppose that's what I'm told.
Yeah, we're told that someone mailed her the book.
Yes.
She read the book, and then she disclosed to you, or the team, that she had read the book.
Yes.
Okay. And so, isn't honesty an important part of one's release plan?
It is.
Morgan should be commended. Morgan should be commended for not concealing the fact that she was reading a book that has some dark themes to it. Agree?
I'm not sure. I'm not a doctor, so I don't, from the clinical standpoint, that's not my role.
Okay. So in addition to this one book, Rent Boy, did you ask Miss Geyser about the other types of literature that she's interested in?
Yes.
You know that she's interested in biographies, right?
Yes.
And you know that she likes historical books, if you will. I might have said Westerns previously. She doesn't like Westerns, but historical books, right?
I am not aware.
But she's talked about her like of Vincent van Gogh, for example, and reading biographies about him, right?
Okay, yes.
And at Winnebago, she doesn't have internet access at Winnebago, right?
I'm not sure what she has access to at Winnebago.
But when you've met with her and talked to her about her hobbies, a central hobby for her is reading, right?
Yes.
It's really been, for the 11 years that she's been in custody, it's really been a crutch for her and something that she's relied on, isn't it?
I know that it's something she's interested in.
And so what Morgan has, and Morgan has an interest in a wide array of reading material. You're aware of that, right?
I'm not aware of a wide array. I know of the horror books that she's described. She mentioned fantasy and the biographies.
Okay. Those are all my questions.
All right, thank you. Redirect.
Nicole Whitaker's colleague Kathleen Martinez testified next. She admitted Morgan didn't break any rules, but she still shouldn't be released.
You're aware that one way the department can seek revocation is when rules are violated, right?
That's correct.
Does that apply here?
No.
Why not?
I Ms. Geyser did not violate any rules of conditional release.
Right, so then why
I'm
is
aware
the,
of.
why, why is the department seeking revocation at this point then?
It's based on concerns about safety to the community and to Ms. Geyser.
What is there to address about Jeffrey Pagel's sexual desire over a crime that happened? What can Morgan do about Jeffrey Pagel's problems, other than contact?
I do not believe Morgan has any responsibility to address Jeffrey Pagel's concerns.
Okay, so all the stuff he's posting on the internet about his own behavior, that has nothing to do with Morgan, right?
I don't agree with that because the content of what is posting does have to do with Morgan, but that he's posting is not Morgan's fault or responsibility.
Then there's Lisa Portman. She's been Morgan's therapist for the past year. She also had no idea Morgan was reading Rent Boy, but was aware about Jeffrey Pagel from Morgan's therapy sessions, just not the full extent.
Was the treatment team aware that Ms. Geyser's interest in reading material that had themes of murder and organ selling on the black market was something that was occurring?
I can't speak to what the treatment team knew.
Okay, did you know these things?
No.
Okay, so that was never addressing the affinity for these types of themed literature. It was not something that you've addressed with Ms. Geyser in therapy.
No.
So if the conditional release planning team wanted to try to mitigate risk in some way and come to you, you would have no insight in terms of treatment that's been done with Ms. Geyser about those topics.
Correct.
Okay. In terms of this individual, Jeffrey Pagels, were you aware of Ms. Geyser's relationship with him?
I've heard his name mentioned before in therapy.
Okay. Was information relayed to you that Ms. Geyser wanted to be sexually intimate with this person?
No.
Was information relayed to you that this person was sexually aroused by Ms. Geyser's index offense?
No.
Were you aware that Ms. Geyser was sending this individual letters or cards?
Yeah, I want to clarify, I did find out recently since the filing of the petition,
Okay.
but prior,
Okay, so in terms of in a therapeutic clinical setting, these are not things that would have been addressed between you and Ms. Geyser?
correct.
Okay.
But there was still no concern about Morgan getting conditional release.
Even now, as you sit here right now today, knowing everything you know, are you concerned at all about Morgan's attitude or behavior in therapy?
No.
What about just in general, speaking about Morgan as a person? Are you somehow now alarmed that there's risk factors now that you were unaware of? Is that how you feel?
No.
Okay. Have you ever felt like Morgan withholds information from you in this year that you've treated her? Do you feel like you have to pry information out of her in therapy, or would you describe her as somebody who discloses and reports what she does?
Yes, she is discloses and reports. She comes in ready to talk regularly.
And I think it's important to cover this topic, ma'am. After reading this book, Rent Boy, that has these concerning themes, or these gory themes, did you notice a regression in Morgan such that you were alarmed that perhaps she had read something disturbing and was now experiencing trauma in therapy, or no?
I have not seen any regression from her since I've been working with her. I don't know when she read the book.
Okay.
When Morgan was initially granted conditional release, 3 different psychologists testified she was ready, and this time was no different despite the concerns raised by the Department of Health Services.
Do you have an opinion about her suitability for conditional release?
Yes, so I was aware of some of the books. I wasn't aware of this particular book, but after talking with Morgan and after doing some search myself about this book and speaking with Dr. Pope, it doesn't change my opinion about her suitability for conditional release.
But there's nothing about what I've learned since knowing that the state was attempting to revoke Ms. Geyser's petition that would suggest to me that she now suddenly poses a significant risk of bodily harm to herself, others, or serious property damage if conditionally released, with all the supports, accountability, supervision that entails.
After reviewing the entirety of the available data, my opinion has not changed.
But what does the judge have to say about it all?
I'm satisfied from what Ms. Portman testified to that there was no reason to stop the process on conditional release and to go forward with the conditional release program and to have the plan developed. What I looked for in the testimony was, did Ms. Geyser lie? Was there subterfuge? Was there manipulation? Was there game playing? People we're always told that Ms. Geyser is smart and intelligent. Intelligent people have the ability to game play, to play the system, if you will. Even in tense situations, they understand how to proceed. And they know they have developed techniques and strategies to manipulate those people that supervise them and watch them. Now, none of that came out today, that any of those circumstances exist. So I'm satisfied Ms. Geyser's communication with people in the institution and who she talked to about the conditional release team too was truthful and accurate. She reacted to questions that she was asked. I saw no hidden agenda on her part, no lying, no misrepresentation. That's important from the court standpoint. With regard to much has been said about books, the nature of the book, no one testified about what the book was really like except for Dr. Robbins. I was somewhat taken aback when he said it was a humorous book. I don't know whether it is or not. I'm assuming people on the supervised release team had looked at it and knew what it was. But he basically put the book in context. Nobody challenged that context. With regard to the contact with Mr. Pagel, which is a matter to be concerned with, first and foremost, nobody disagrees that based upon the nature of the case, the nature of Ms. Geyser's involvement in the case, that she's going to be subject to, if you will, public scrutiny, the public notoriety, public curiosity. And there are people out there who obsess over cases such as this. I don't know whether Mr. Pagel necessarily is that, but there are people out there that will take advantage of the system for their own purposes. There is nothing in the information that we have brought forward that when Ms. Geyser developed a sense of what the person was really about, she stopped contact. There's nothing in the record that shows that she did anything to encourage the person beyond sending him some pictures and doing things like that, which she probably shouldn't have done. But I don't see that in and of itself as a reason to find that she's at risk for herself or at risk to harm the community in a conditional release plan. We can't stop other people from contacting her, from doing things that they shouldn't do. But what we can do is regulate and monitor Ms. Geyser so she doesn't encourage that. Now, there's nobody testified today that she encouraged any of this stuff. Now, she was participating, she communicated with him, she saw him, but that doesn't mean that she encouraged it or did anything to place her in an unsafe position.
Judge Boren ruled he didn't see a risk to the public or to Morgan herself, meaning her conditional release plan will move forward. No, Morgan Geyser couldn't just walk out of the door after the hearing. There still needs to be a plan in place, and she'll be living in a group home when she's released. Judge Boren said that the plan still needs to be reviewed, and the review can happen as early as March 21st. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.